The moon was almost at the full. Bright moonlight flooded the road, but I was stalked by the shadows of the trees, by the crooked oak branches reaching out towards me, some threateningly, others as though they needed companionship. Once I dreamed that the trees could walk, that on moonlit nights like this they would uproot themselves for a while, visit each other, talk about old times, for they had seen many men and happenings, especially the older ones, and then, before dawn, they, they would return to the places where they had been condemned to grow, lonely sentimentals of the night, and this was a good night for them to walk. They appeared eager to do so, a restless rustling of leaves, the cracking of branches. These were sounds that came from within them in the silence of the night. Occasionally, other strollers passed me in the dark. It was still quite early, just 8 o'clock, and some people were on their way home. Others were walking into town for a taste of bright lights, shops, and restaurants. On the unlit road, I could not recognize them. They did not notice me. I was reminded of an old song from my childhood. Softly, I began humming restaurants. On the unlighted road, I could not recognize them. They did not notice me. I was reminded of an old song from my childhood. Softly, I began humming the tune, and soon the words came back to me. We three, we are not a crowd, we are not even company, my echo, my shadow, and me. I looked down at my shadow, moving silently beside me. We take our shadows for granted, don't we? There they are, the uncomplaining companions of the lifetime, mute and helpless witnesses to our every act of commission or omission. On this bright moonlit night, I could not help noticing you, Shadow, and I was sorry that you had to see so much that I was ashamed of, but glad too uh, that you were around when I had small triumphs. And what about my echo? I thought of calling out to see if my call came back to me, but I refrained from doing so, as I did not wish to disturb the perfect stillness of the mountains or the conversations of the trees. The road wound up the hill and leveled out at the top, where it became a ribbon of moonlight entwined between tall deodars. A flying squirrel glided across the road, leaving one tree for another. A nightjar called. The rest was silence. The old cemetery loomed up before me. There were many old graves and some large and monumental, and there were a few recent graves too, for the cemetery was still in use. I could see flowers scattered on one of them, a few late dahlias and scarlet salvia. Further on, near the boundary wall, part of the cemetery's retaining wall had collapsed in the heavy monsoon rains. Some of the tombstones had come down with the wall. One grave lay exposed, a rotting coffin and a few scattered bones were the only relics of someone who had lived and loved like you and me. Part of tombstone laid beside the road, but the lettering had worn away. I am not normally a morbid person, but something made me stoop and pick up a smooth round shard of bone, probably part of the skull. When my hand closed over it, the bone crumbled into fragments. I let them fall to the grass, dust to dust, and from somewhere not too far away came the sound of someone whistling. At first, I thought it was another late evening stroller, whistling to himself much as I had been humming my old song. But the whistler approached quite rapidly. The whistling was loud and cheerful. A boy on the bicycle sped fast past. I had only a glimpse of him before his cycle went weaving through the shadows of the road. But he was back again in a few minutes, and this time he stopped a few feet away from me and gave me a quizzical half smile. A slim, dusky boy of 14 or 15, He wore a school blazer and a yellow scarf. His eyes were pools of liquid moonlight. You don't have a bell on your cycle? I said. He said nothing, just smiled at me with his head. I put out my hand and I thought he was going to take it. But then, quite suddenly, he was off again, whistling cheerfully, though rather tunelessly. A whistling schoolboy. A bit late for him to be out, but he seemed an independent sort. The whistling grew fainter, then faded away altogether. A deep sound denying silence fell upon the forest. My shadow and I walked home. Next morning, I woke to a different kind of whistling, the song of the thrush outside my window. It was a wonderful day, the sunshine warm and sensuous, and I longed to be out in the open. But there was work to be done, proofs to be corrected, letters to be written, and it was several days before I could walk to the top of the hill to that lonely, tranquil resting place under the deodars. It seemed to me ironic that those who had the best view of the glistening, snow capped peaks were all buried several feet underground. Some repair work was going on. The retaining wall of the cemetery was being shored up, but the overseer told me that there was no money to restore the damaged grave. With the help of Chokidar, I returned the scattered bones to a little hollow under the collapsed masonry, and I left some money with him so that he could have the open grave bricked up. The name of the gravestone had worn away, but I could make out a date 20th November 1950, some 50 years ago, but not too long ago as gravestones go. I found the burial register in the church vestry and turned back the yellowing pages into 1950 when I was just a schoolboy myself. I found the name there, Michael Datta, aged 15, and the cause of the death, road accident.